Okay, for this video, I thought I'd explain how I created the dirt and moss on this cross monument that I used in one of my recent renders. Normally, I would create the entire texture in Marmoset Toolbag, but this time I thought I'd try adding the dirt with nodes in Blender. Now, I'm not going to say that this is the only way to do it or the best way to do it, but this is how I did it and it worked out pretty well. So let's get into it. So here's my cross model, and I'm going to switch to the shading workspace, and I'm going to change my viewport shading to rendered so I can see the material on the model. And you can see my material set up down here in this window. If you don't know how to set up a material, I do have another video that covers that, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. So the first thing I'm going to do here is unplug the albedo map so I can see what's happening on the model without the texture being visible. Next, I'll hit Shift A, and I'm going to search for gradient, and I want to add a gradient texture node. And I'm going to plug the color into the base color. And right away you can see that I'm getting the gradient effect, but it's moving in the wrong direction. I want it coming from the bottom up. So I'm going to select the gradient texture and hit Control T, and that will add a mapping node and a texture coordinate node. Now, in order to do what I just did, you need to have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. If you don't know what the Node Wrangler is, that's also covered in my other video, so you might want to go watch that one first and then come back to this one. So in the mapping node, I can change the Y rotation value to 90, and now I have the gradient coming up from the bottom, but it's kind of going all over the place. It's not really doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to change this from generated to object. And now it's just at the bottom. Next, I'll hit Shift A and add a color ramp node and drop it between the gradient texture and the principled BSDF. And this will allow me to adjust the gradient by dragging the sliders. I'm also going to change this from linear to ease, which will make a softer transition between the black and white. And now I need to break up the gradient a little bit, so I'm going to hit Shift A again and add a noise texture, and then Shift A again and add a mix node. I'm going to drop it in right here. Actually, no, I don't want to put it there. Stick it over here. And I'm going to plug this mapping vector into the vector here. Then I'll plug the color here into B on the mix node. Now you can see how the gradient is breaking up, but it's a little too big. So I'm going to change the texture scale to 15, and I'll set the detail to 3, and I'll set the gradient texture here. Instead of linear, I'm going to do easing. I'm going to set the mix factor to 0.65, and then I can play with these sliders a little more. till I get something, I don't know, maybe like that for now. It's probably good enough for now. Now I need to bring in my moss texture. So I'm just going to drag and drop it straight into the editor. Now I'll add a mix color node, and I'm going to drop it in here between the color ramp and the principled BSDF. And I'll plug the color ramp into the factor, and I'll plug the albedo map into the B input. Now you can see it's starting to come back a little bit. And now I'll bring the moss over here, and I'm going to plug that into the A input. Now you can see I'm getting the moss on here. But it's too big. So with the moss texture selected, again I'm going to hit Control T to add that mapping and texture coordinate nodes. And now I can adjust the scale. And I think what I found was 4 works pretty well. Next, I'm going to add a brightness contrast node, and I'll drop it in right here. And I'm going to set the contrast to 0.1, so I get a little more darkness on the dirt parts. And then I'm going to add one more thing here. RGB curves, and need to make some room. I got to drop this one in right here. Now what I like to do is just give this a little bit of an S-curve to brighten up the brights a little bit and darken the darks a little bit. And then you can just, again, come back here and play with these sliders some more, depending on what you want this to look like. Another thing you can do if you want, depending on what kind of a look you're going for, you can add a hue saturation. And then you can drop down the saturation if you want it just desaturated a little bit, or you can adjust this and you can get all kinds of crazy colors out of it. You wanted some kind of a sci-fi moss, something like that. And then when you're all done, the last thing you can do here is group all of these together, like I have these here in these boxes. Just select everything you want included, and then right click and join in new frame, and that'll put a frame around them. And then if you right click inside the frame, you can rename it. And I'll do the same thing down here. And then once you have that, if you want to move these around, all you got to do is grab it You can move the whole group all at once. Okay, I think that's about it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. It's greatly appreciated, and it really helps the channel to grow and reach more people. Okay, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.